Basically, St. Thomas, I'm from Bridgefield, St. Thomas. I love St. Thomas for sure from my heart. I love St. Thomas. And I would like some more activities to be happening in Bridgefield, St. Thomas. Bring back the life to Bridgefield. The raspberry fruit time. Got tree houses. You go in the tree houses, you know, you raspberry fruit, you got your little radio. And you see Bridgefield pastor just don't like go to waste. Don't like go to waste. We got a hard court. We could do every other weekend. The old men versus the young boys in cricket. The old men versus the young boys in football. And we could also have the old ladies versus the young girls in netball, volleyball, whatever the case may be. Long tennis, road tennis, whatever. But Bridgefield community needs coming back to life. I love it. And once the community living in love, we don't even need no violence. That's the main object, violence. Get rid of the violence. You see, once you could get rid of the violence, I believe that Barbados will be very, very, very cool. Well, to be honest, Hyman Hill, I grew up riding bicycle coming through Hyman Hill. I get few falls, better known as, you know, road dolls, burnouts, whatever the case may be. But right now, Hyman Hill recently paved, and I drive on it already. And the view to the part of Hyman Hill, you can see actually out St. John Airport side. And if you drive in a vehicle and you stop and you can see the view, and you turn off your vehicle engine, you can hear the birds chirping, the leaves blowing, and then the view. I love it. Welches also, Welches area, the housing area, the units that going up, that the government, you know, establishing in the area. That's something good the government doing too, because everybody can't afford $150,000, $250,000 in household. Small income, you know, that's a good idea. And I also welcome and appreciate the development of St. Thomas and Welches. Enough love all the time.
My name is Rommel. I would have grew up in Rock Hall. From very young, run around these streets. Sorry, not these streets, but these gullies, these campgrounds, all around here, the first Freedom Village. Yeah, it was great to grow up over here, you know. The place where freedom would start. The journey actually to freedom would start, you know. I enjoy it. It's a nice, quiet neighborhood, but we like more activities, please, sir, and please, ma'am. We would like to see more activities continue. We don't want to see some Zumba out there sometimes. I want to wake up and see some Zumba out there on that nice big platform. Some more poetry, some more culture, some more singing, some more dancing, you know, all them things I would like to see some more of it. You know, the place is a real nice neighborhood. St. Thomas is one of the best, you know. We still got a lot of peaceful things going on in the countryside. You got some sugar cane, some raspberry fruit, a lot of fruits. You got mangoes right here, golden apples, coconut water, natural juices still out here, plentiful, that kind of things, you know. But we need some more culture. Bring it through.
Hi, I'm Chef Adrian Combach. I'm from Warren's Terrace in St. Thomas. And some ideas I would like for St. Thomas is a water park. Because we know St. Thomas doesn't have any beaches, but we have lots of open land and lots of natural springs found in St. Thomas that could be utilized too as well to have a fun water park for locals and tourists alike when they land to Barbados. Also, I would also love to have a cooking school for kids and adults in St. Thomas, centrally located, that everyone could participate and everyone could learn to cook. You don't have to become a chef, but we all got to eat, and we all someday have to learn to cook and survive. So those are two of my main ideas that I would love to see for St. Thomas. In Warrens, a lot of development is happening. There's a new mall going up in Welches. Above by Millennium Heights, they're going to construct some other things that's happening here within the next 5 years. So Warren's area from my gap back up to Courcelette area is developing. So we would love to see some more fun activities for the kids. You know, it will be safer because the sea has no back door as you grab money to certain time. You see it on the back door. So having a water park where kids could go around and have lunch and Bajan cuisine and roast breadfruits happening, you know, some flying fish and cocoa and stuff like that, you know, at this water park would be absolutely amazing. And those are my ideas that I would love to see in St. Thomas within the next 10 to 15 years.
Greetings. Yeah, I'm Everton Henry, bred, born, raised, and live in St. Thomas. And the area of St. Thomas I'm from is Walk Spring, born in Clifton Hill, just moved to Walk Spring a couple of years thereafter, and I've been there ever since. Growing up in St. Thomas is quite interesting. You know, we have the Clifton Hill Moravian Church, we then have the South Wharf Primary and the Clifton Hill School after a while, which are no longer in existence. We had the plantation life, which would be Clifton Plantation on the eastern side, and on the western side, Walk Spring Plantation. And further down there was Stronghope and Applewicks. But most of all, the plantation that most persons would have heard of would be Mount Wilton and all the different things that went on at Mount Wilton Plantation. But in essence, I'm a Walk Spring and Clifton Plantation person. Growing up at Clifton Hill, there are many stories we have heard, but because in the interest of time, I'd just like to remind persons of some of the persons who passed through Clifton Hill, and one of the most distinguished individuals I can think of now is Reverend Wilfred Wood, who is the first black bishop in the Church of England. When they say Anglican Church, we may want to limit it, we think a little narrow. But if I say in the Church of England worldwide, the first black bishop, born from Prout, went to school at Clifton Hill, and went over to the Holy Innocents Anglican Church, and he's the first black bishop of the world coming from St. Thomas right here in Barbados. Another thing I'd like to see for the parish, especially as far as agriculture is concerned, because I remember when the cane trucks used to move, and when there's a lot of vegetables at Portfell, there was a lot of, and all Hyman Hill canes and Vaucluse sweet potatoes. We can think of all those fields and all the lovely canes we would have gotten. And there was a plantation, the famous Mount Wilton Plantation, where a part was given for residential development and agricultural development. I think if you should put it in a quarter, the southeastern part of the plantation, residential, the western and the northeastern part went for agriculture. And if all the plantations that want to abandon the land and then come back next 20, 30 years and apply, I think that a good policy would be say, look, you can get your RAB land, you can go, we can get that housing development, but we have to give some to agriculture and not even sell, because the amount of money these guys would make by selling land in St. Thomas in the elevated areas, they could afford to contribute to the government land bank, so to speak, and the water is good in St. Thomas. And if we trap the water properly and allow it to get into the aquifers, then we can pull the water back from the earth for irrigation purposes. Another aspect of St. Thomas would be centenarians, and I can, persons mention those from Carrington Village and Chapman Village. Allen View. I remember Dunk, my grandfather's sister. She was one. Her neighbor then became a centenarian shortly after her, and she worked at Walk Spring Plantation. She worked at Walk Spring Plantation, and the guy, his true name when research was Grisette, but we used to call it R.T. Newton. I remember Dunk coming to his function when he turned centenarian, and that should be Elvira or Delphina Johnson, R.T. Newton. Then there's another lady from called Clarice Lynch. She was also a centenarian. All of these people worked together at Walk Spring as laborers, at Walk Spring Plantation as laborers. There was one lady who worked from Clifton Hill named Martha Mears many years ago. She died in the house fire at 99. There are some other centenarians that I'm trying to recap, but there are three that come to mind straight away. I know the lady from Diggs Village from the other side, but I'm just trying to look at that little area in itself. And those persons had connections with Walk Spring Plantation, who all became centenarians. And these people are persons who, I mean, I remember down, would drink a Coke, like her salt beef, then eat muffins. She was cooking up to just over 100. She was cooking, she would offer you anything. But when you don't drink a carbonated beverage every day. But the thing is that she was small and fine, and she walked very far. She walked from Allenview over to Walk Spring Plantation all of her working life, as far as I know. And Clarice also, Clarice, she did some farm work and RT. But there's somebody else there that I'm missing. Oh, there's a lady from Clifton. She didn't work at Washington. She worked at Clifton Valley. She was a Leacock. She also was another centenarian from the area. And I'm certain if I tax my brain I can find some more. But we produced quite a few centenarians, and we made that contribution. So we add those from Walk Spring, Clifton Hillside over to the Carrington Village and the other centenarians in St. Thomas. We have quite a few. We have produced quite a few centenarians, and these are persons who work really hard, and all of them had children, as far as I know. Yes, all of them had children back at that time.
I've seen a lot of places round the world and far apart. Deep inside there's only one that's closest to my heart. Wherever I may lay my head, no matter where I roam, Barbados will always be home. I love the open spaces, what a feeling to be free. See them smiling faces, holding mean the world to me. A place where friends are family, a place to stand alone. Barbados will always be home. Barbados, Barbados, Barbados will always be home.
Hello, good night. Good night, everyone. I just want to welcome you all to the Ideas Forum St. Thomas edition. I'd like to first welcome the Prime Minister acting, the Honorable Cynthia Bradshaw, as well as the MP for the area, MP Ford. Also want to say a special good night to the Minister of Culture. We see in our presence. Good night, Minister. Members of the media, especially members, residents of St. Thomas, welcome tonight. As Mr. Morris said, we are here to hear your ideas, your solutions on how we can make this great parish better, and by extension, Barbados. And so with my co-host Tahir as well, I'd like to welcome you, the first speaker to the microphone. I see we have a Tyrell Giles to deliver some of the ideas. Tyrell, the microphone is just to your left, so all yours.
Good night, Tyrell Jones from Allenview, St. Thomas. Good night, Acting PM, MP Ford, all governmental officials, and Tahir Alex. Good night, everybody. Here tonight to speak a little bit about community tourism. Growing up in Allenview, and we look around, we see that St. Thomas itself is home to many attractions, especially one of the main driving forces, Harrison's Cave. We also have Welch Mahal Gully, but we also have a lot of underdeveloped attractions, which are becoming more popular among locals, whether we think about Coles Cave, whether we think about Pori Spring, even if you think about Jack in the Box Gully. What I would like to see though, the problem firstly is that there are people, and for many years and decades, parents and grandparents have been going into Coles Cave, or Porridge Spring or Jack in the Box Gully, and they've been doing so without the correct equipment. People have been stuck. We've heard the horror stories, but I think that now is a good time to act and develop these products as community tourism products, so that the locals who've been going into these areas and know them like the back of their hands can now be part of the management and development of such, so that a simple Google search will show that people are charging for Coles Cave tours. But this now puts things in place that we train them, that they have the correct equipment, that they have the emergency response training and what's not, that when they do go into the cave or the Porridge Spring or Jack in the Box Gully, that they know what they're doing, one, and everybody is secure. So I just think that we should develop these community tourism products in St. Thomas a little more, now more than ever.
Tyrell, I must commend you for your idea. And good night, everyone. And as Alex said, we won't hear from you. But also, I think what we can do tonight is have discussions around some of the ideas that have been put forward. I think that would be important, that we could flesh out the ideas, because you can come and share. Also, let me flesh out and have a conversation. So if you have a remark as well or a thought on it, feel free to share based on anybody's presentation. So Tyrell, your idea for community tourism is pretty good. Who would you say would be the stakeholders responsible for executing this project? One, should it be a community-based organization, community-based business, then funnel to the BTMI? How do you see this being fleshed out? Because I want for us to go forward on these ideas and practically build them out into a way that it could be easily executable.
Yeah, thanks, Tahir. So what I would say is that I go into detail in tomorrow's paper, but for now I would say that it should be, yeah. for now I would say that it should start community-based, as in community-based ideas. The guys who actually go into the caves now, the guys who actually go to Porridge Spring. I mean, people all over the island come to St. Thomas to utilize the spring and the cave. But I would say that just like how the staff at Harrison's Cave undergo over 30 plus hours of international training, hardcore training before they can touch a zip line and before anyone else can cross that zip line, that the same is done before you can take anyone into that cave. Because I have family that have been stuck in the cave before. I've heard the horror stories of the fire trucks and the police and everything coming to do searches in the cave, and we really don't want visitors especially coming to do these activities and having those same horror stories. So I think that it starts with the will of the community, and then tapping into BTMI, BHTA to execute the training and the promotion of such, so that it reaches a point that the community can then manage it itself.
That's lovely. And I like how you made the point on the will of the community. So it's essentially, perhaps that's an idea you could come up with as a possible business. You understand? I don't think BTMI is gonna do the training to the persons that already go down into the cave, because they know it better than anybody else. They should be training us to then execute. So I really like it. So if anybody has any thoughts, that you can come and share after as well. Alex, any feedback?
Yeah, thanks, Tahir, and thanks a lot for that, Tyrell. I think you raised a really important point, which sometimes we kind of forget when we're discussing ecotourism, is that sometimes what we have here in Barbados isn't just for the tourists. There are a lot of people in Barbados who don't know some of the ins and outs of St. Thomas, and some of the gullies, and some of the wonder, the splendor that's available. You know, I always remark when anybody comes to Barbados, or anytime I go in for a drive, I will take them some places, and I show them some things. They say, but I never know Barbados had that. You know, so I think this is an opportunity for us as well to develop an appreciation for the natural heritage of Barbados. And so, Tyrell, I really want to salute you for that idea. I'm going to look for the article in the paper tomorrow, take a look at it. And therefore, then the business ideas to come, you know. I think we discussed it at a past ideas forum. Sometimes the people from the area know better than anybody else what the area needs. And sometimes that's an opportunity for someone to start a business. So, again, if there are any other ideas that come out of a spin of this, I think we have. Good night. Come to the microphone, please. Or we'll get a wireless. Okay, I just asked if you could come to the microphone quickly, please. Greatly appreciate it. And I'd like to also welcome Minister Jordan, who just joined us. So good night to you, sir.
Hi. No, I just had a question related to your idea.
You just state your name for me, please.
Oh, sorry, Carla Daniel.
Thank you, Carla.
Right. So the question was with regards to the practicality, because right now as it stands, Coles Cave is open. So if I wanted to go tomorrow and make a couple bucks and take a few people into Coles Cave, I could do so. When you begin to place limitations, so maybe tell people that they have to register, or they have to become licensed, they have to undergo this training, you are essentially limiting the current activities that are occurring. And so at the moment, right, anybody could go without any restrictions, without having to go through the expense, perhaps, of purchasing equipment or doing training. And then there's also the considerations about the other types of activities. After COVID, you had a whole set of persons spring up that do hiking. And there are tons of hiking tours all over. And I can't necessarily say that some of our gullies are any safer than Coles Cave, for example. So when you take it out of St. Thomas and away from Coles Cave and Pori Spring to the wider Barbados and to the kind of unofficial tours that are ongoing both for locals and tourists, then how does that impact the bottom line? And are we going to be seen as constraining persons who are trying to make a living and who are trying to kind of get into that community tourism and local tourism and stop them from earning their dollar? No, I mean, I think it's an amazing idea in terms of safety and all of that, but with regards to the persons who are currently in it and doing it now and persons looking to get into it, how do you get over the hurdle of being seen to be constraining what is, I wouldn't say a free-for-all, but what is currently an open opportunity?
Yes, I just wanted to make the point to what Carla said. Makes sense. And you don't want to appear to be limited individuals, but if I were the one asked the question, my first concern would be liability. If you are taking people on tours, you may be getting out in terms of opportunity. But if one of those people happen to get hurt under your watch, what is your capacity to handle a lawsuit? What's the country's capacity to handle the negative fallout? So all sides have to be considered because it is a little more complex than just helping out the small fella.
Thanks for that, Carla. And we'll definitely, we will be developing it for sure. I know Senator Nichols also has a keen interest in the development of caves as chairman of the caves. But I would say that, St. Thomas is a small place, and I can name everybody probably who does the tours in these caves, and they are all very deeply invested as well. They probably also have family who has been stuck in there. So, any form of regulation or rules for safety purposes put in place, I don't think it would ever be met with any kind of reservation at all. So, we just meet them where they're at, people to people, heart to heart, and I think that it'll work out.
Thank you. I don't want to take away the moderator's time, but perhaps now would be a good time to switch gears a little bit instead of going to person number 2 on the list. Selwyn, let's do the video from Mark Hill because it is on the same issue. And let me explain. Mark Hill is the head of Export Barbados, but he's a St. Thomas resident. And he had some ideas to share with Mark Hill. Yes, he had some ideas to share last week, but because we had to postpone, and now he's overseas on government business, so I asked him to put it together in a video. So you'll get the video now to see what his ideas were and how they fit into what was just said.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are here at the grandfather of gullies, Jack in the Box Gully. This gully was formed thousands of years ago when there was a clave that collapsed and created the formation of this particular gully. But while we may be seeing this just as another space where many people come and just dump garbage, this is a part of the Barbados critical ecosystem, part of our biodiversity. In fact, what we refer to this as is part of what we call our natural capital. So to the same extent that we have Harrison Cave that is generating a significant level of economic activity, the pitch that I want to make is for us to look at how our gullies in St. Thomas can begin to create significant economic activity. Now, St. Thomas has one of the largest networks of gullies alongside St. George. But the beautiful thing about the St. Thomas Gully is that it runs from St. Thomas all the way right down to Bridgetown. So you can get from here all the way down into the city, along with network, passing through villages and passing through the gully experiences. Now, what we want to recommend is that these gullies can be cleaned up, which makes them a lot more sustainable in line with our blue-green investment opportunities. And this can begin to generate significant revenue for the parish of St. Thomas, whereby these trails are cleaned up. We put in some wooden bridges and we can bike from town all the way through this network and create a new tourism experience that adds value alongside of Harrison Cave. It's not a very difficult thing to do. We can start with a simple pilot of maybe 3 kilometers, but it will create significant jobs for youngsters. But when we run the numbers on this, let me say we have 10,000 tourists per year passing through our gully network and enjoying a gully ride. What we anticipate, if they spend 75 US per person, we're talking about at least $7.5 million in revenue being brought to St. Thomas that didn't exist before. And these bike trails will pay back for themselves in a very short period as well. 2, it brings a lot of persons who want to commute by bike off the road and they get them from point A to point B. So it's a matter of how we design the network and make it very interesting and exciting, not only for locals, but also for visitors as well. So we know we have a number of people that hike right now through these gullies. Right now we're sitting on a bridge here at Jack in the Box, so you can actually ride right through and continue up the network. And this is consistent across a lot of spaces in Barbados where you can ride under these bridges and get from point A to point B and keep out of harm's way with vehicular traffic. So we anticipate that this would be a very good project. A matter of design, the design work has to be done. We can begin to look at the design options, the wooden bridges, how we maintain water flow, discussion with coastal zone. You know, we have a program called Roof to Reef. This can be a significant value add to that Roof to Reef program where we can have from gully to beach. So you can ride from a gully at any point in St. Thomas and you can get down to the beach. And that's just the idea. And we think that it has viability. There's discussions with some manufacturers of electric bicycles that you can actually rent a bicycle and come through the network from point A to point B. So you're taking what you have at Harrison Cave, that particular natural capital that you explore with the cave, and you're transforming your gullies now into an economic viable opportunity. And this can grow big, and it's just a matter of taking the investment and taking the time to develop it through good design.
I really appreciate the idea shared by CEO Hill in that video. I think he opened a proverbial can of worms in terms of ideas that we could discuss tonight. A can of gullies, my co-host says. I'd like to acknowledge Minister Ford. Right on time, we were talking about the environment as well, so thank you. But before we move on to the next speaker, like I said, Mark really shared a lot of ideas in terms of how we could develop and start to get some appreciation for St. Thomas and its natural aspect. So just based on his conversations, I don't know if there's anyone else here that would just like to kind of bounce or reflect off of that. Minister?
A pleasant good night to one and all. I'm sure I want to give Mark the rested assurance that what he just exposed there in terms of the gullies, Jack and Box in particular, and there's Eternal Hall Wood. I am sure that every single person who listened to the budget, maybe not the 10-hour speech, but who listened to the budget, are being presented by my good friend Ryan Strong, would have heard that this government is now on the cusp of ensuring that there is a Barbados Nature Conservancy Trust, which will have lead responsibility for not only the gullies, but our National Botanical Garden and a number of sites across Barbados, a number of our parks as we know it. And when I say lead responsibility, they'll be responsible for getting funds and ensure through the NCC that we have the operational aspect to it as well. But our Gullies project, it is called Gullies Our Life project. And I want to thank my good friend, Minister Jordan, for coming up with that name, because we recognize that the gullies in our ecosystem must be a part of our life. It must be the basis, the heart that beats around the country in terms of protecting a natural ecosystem. The gullies being an important cog as it relates to our ability to fight our climate change and our natural disasters. It is the only green green carbon sink that we have, without a doubt. And we started the project, the Gullies Our Life project, about 2 months now. And I must say, because it is disturbing, Mark spoke of the rustic beauty associated with the gullies, the fact that the ecosystem can provide an alternative touristic drive for our country, the fact that exercising as a part of that oasis could be something that we look forward to. But the other side of that is the side that I would like to equally talk about, and that is the wrong side of my tongue now, the maladaptive behavior of Barbadians. Of course, it is a shameful exercise when I, as minister, have to be part of a project which, in 1 hour time, is able to liberate at least 80 bags of garbage. 1 hour, 80 bags of garbage in our gullies. It speaks to how we are treating that which will protect our children and our children's children. The importance of our gullies must never be underestimated in our fight to protect us from the vagaries of climate change. And that is why we have employed 100 persons across the length of the breadth of this country, where our gullies are concerned, to not only clean our gullies, but ensure we remove that which is invasive, that which is harmful, and along with having the conversation with our indigenous and traditional folk, because they understand the gullies better than most of us who regard ourselves as ecologists and dendrologists and zoologists. They understand it, and we have to have an appreciation to bring them on board as part of the conversation. So what we said is that we invite the communities around the area to be able to have the conversation with us so that we can plant, rehabilitate these gullies, and allow them to now not only be enjoyed by our locals, which is important, but equally provide another avenue where our tourists will come and enjoy beautiful Barbados. I want to say we have started the project. It is now at the stage where we are going, because as part of another aspect of the project is to have the tree planting aspect of it. And the reason for the tree planting is so that we can rehabilitate with the trees that we know are essential, so that the monkeys, as we know it, will stay in the gullies and not enter our households and our residential area. That is the reason for having a project that encompasses a tree planting exercise. And there's no better place to have our fruit trees than our gullies. Biodiversity and biodiversity conservation, another important aspect of it. How we can ensure that our flora and our fauna are equally distributed, and there is that unequivocal Yamos, because it's important for us to be able to build our biodiversity that way. And what we have said is that along with ensuring the protection of our flora, our natural fauna, which is our animals, that those species that are important in order for the survival of our biosphere, our green space, that those species are protected as well. So it is a holistic project. I hope that Barbados will come on board, but equally, it is also a call for us to stop those, we call it, in science we'll call the anthropogenic behaviors, the behaviors which cause us to destroy our ecosystem by littering and doing all those bad things. So the project is well on its way, so Mark has no problem, and we are going to ensure that our oasis as a Galilee, that they continue to strive, and that Barbados can remain beautiful and on spot, in the words of Cheryl Hackett. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Ford. Gullies are life. I will take that one to heart. I hope everyone else does as well. At this point, I believe the Prime Minister, you have a few thoughts you'd like to share with us.
So good night, everyone. I think Adrian probably preempted my thoughts because I was going to call him up to speak to the Gullies project, because I know we've been in discussions for quite some time regarding getting that off the ground. That ties in nicely with MTW's work in relation to the bridges, because I think St. Thomas, I'm sure there will be some questions tonight about our bridges as well. But in addition to looking at the gullies and trying to preserve the natural environment, one of the things that we also recognize across the Scotland district is the need to restore and to rehabilitate a number of the bridges, because they in turn also become a space where people are curious about, but also it's a heritage area as well. There's a lot of history behind the bridges as well. So we've also in MPW this year put aside some funds, not only to assess the bridges, but also to, in some cases, redesign the bridges with a view to them being able to have a bridges project, which would allow, and Dr. Springer, who's Parl's second in ministry, because of his background in history, he has been working with the team at the University of the West Indies to look at creating a project which would allow us to identify where each of our bridges are. I think the last time we had a study done on the bridges was in 1985, and it identified a number of the bridges and the work that needed to be done, but we did not have, over the course of the last few decades, a lot of work and improvements to the bridges. So hence why MP Ford and others, a number of parish speaks, have raised these issues in relation to the condition of bridges across the country. It is an expensive exercise, just as it is for us to be able to put persons in place to be able to clean the bridges, but I think both ministries are committed to being able to make those improvements, particularly in the Scotland district. And I think you know that under the Scotland district project, in addition to the roads that we're seeing getting done, there are a number of bridges as well that are have also been incorporated into the works plan, and that work has already started in the Scotland district. On the earlier point, I think Terrell would have raised, I think it is a good idea to be able to look at safety. I think more and more we are becoming aware that some of the things that we've taken for granted for a number of years now require us to perhaps put a bit of rules and regulations in place, not because we're trying to prevent people from doing things which are natural, but more from the safety perspective, not just for our locals, but also for tourists visiting the island. So I think, Terrell, that the fact that you know everybody who goes in across the length and breadth of St. Thomas and is involved in these activities, it may be worth a conversation with the Barbados Tourism Authority, BTMI, certainly, to be able to capture those individuals and maybe see if we can come up with a plan that works for both parties, because I think at the core of it is really the safety of our people. And I wouldn't want that we wait until somebody comes in and decides to invest in the area, and then we have the uproar from the residents. I feel that this is very much like crabbing. I've attended crab nights in St. Andrew and had a whale of a time. And I believe that these are things that we can tap into as alternative tourist activities and attractions across the country. Many times, if you go to the other islands in the Caribbean, you will find that there are lots of things that are very indigenous, things that we as Bajans probably wouldn't even think about. But in recent times, especially when I've joined the trail with the crabbing, I've found that we are experimenting a bit more, and I think that that needs to be encouraged. Minister Goodinegel recently brought a paper which would have addressed looking at the product in tourism and being able to look at how do we improve and make better the attractions that we have available to us. Because for too long, everybody knows, you know, if you bring family from overseas, a lot of times it's the same attractions over and over and over. And I think that if we're going to have all of these people coming to the country, that the time is ripe now for the ideas that are coming out of these forums, but for ideas to contend where we can actually create business opportunities out of the ideas that are being created here. So I commend you, Terrell, and I think we just have to find the balance with Carla's ideas as well to make sure that we keep people safe. But I just wanted to indicate to you that we are thinking about it, but we are also implementing in this next financial year as well. Thank you.
The conversation is certainly flowing, and you see how many ideas come from one idea. And as we said, Terrell, you're getting it fleshed out already, coming from different perspectives, and that's the important thing as we have these conversations. But the next person I'm going to ask to come to the mic is Mr. Dwight Scott. Just remind us to say where you're from and go straight in. Please give him a round of applause. The energy a bit low tonight. The rain.
All right, good night, everyone. My name is Dwight Scott. I'm from Erie Court, St. Thomas. The idea I have tonight is more agricultural side, yeah? Where is that? If you realize in most constituencies, you're always hearing people saying they want. But in St. Thomas, we're industrious. So if you go at any household in rural St. Thomas, where I'm from, you can either find chickens in the yard, pigs, I'm a pig farmer, ducks, rabbits, anything that is a Bajan meal. So my thing is that instead of like, yes, we got the Ministry of Agriculture and they got all of these things going on, but it ain't really benefiting the people that making it happen, if I could say this, right? So my thing first is that we get a consortium or something and come and we find out who got pigs, who got chickens, who got rabbits, who got whatever, vegetables as well. But then we find a marketplace in St. Thomas. Where is that? Everything that you want that is Barbadian, you can find it at this spot in St. Thomas. The spot that I recommend is not a government property, but it's Highland, right? If you can remember years ago, Highland was this big ecotourism thing going on. You understand? You had people coming from all over the world to come to Highland and then trek in the same gully thing that we was talking about here earlier, straight down to St. Andrew. So this meaning that you opening not only ecotourism doors, but also little employment and little money in the villages and in the gullies again. That's simple. So y'all can look at that in a bigger spectrum, but that's my idea. Yeah?
Round of applause for Dwight. Dwight, I want to thank you for that idea. You're taking us in a slightly different direction, but that's entirely what these events are about. I don't know about the rest, but I could guarantee you that, like you said, agriculture really is at the bedrock of everything we do. You gotta eat to live, you know? And so your idea about perhaps having an assessment of the different livestock that's being kept and the different people in the areas are being, you know, having these livestock, whether it be, as you said, rabbits. If you've got a little sheep, you might got 1 or 2 goats. And you may not think that that's much, but when you add up everything else that everyone has, you start to see the bigger picture. So I really want to commend you for that. I think most of us, if not all of us, are familiar with Highland in one way, shape, or form. So I can't speak necessarily to the viability of the spot, but I can definitely tell you I can see it in my eye right now how that would work. So even if it's not Highland per se, so exactly somewhere else that we can start looking at this, and we can perhaps then use St. Thomas as the pilot and show the other parishes, for example, how you can then make this a reality for the people living there. So really want to commend you on that idea, as I said. Tahir, I don't know if you have anything you want to share coming out of that.
It's a brilliant idea, Dwight. But beyond that, make it as holistic as possible. Some of the best soap makers come from St. Thomas as well. You understand? Come back to the mic, man, Dwight, don't run.
What he's saying is that it not only have to be an agricultural product, whatever that is being produced or even thought of in St. Thomas, we should have a spot that this is what St. Thomas got to offer. We don't ask so much. If you see there's got these forums, people just come in here and ask for a road. The boy don't ask for a job or nothing like that. We just come and ask for infrastructure. You understand? Because, as I said before, we industrious. We can look for what we want for ourselves. You understand? So this here now, for provide now something for a youngster that's saying, no, on the block now, saying my mother got 2 chickens, and she do, I can put 5 in there. Because I know Saturday, they got the thing down there that I could get my thing sell. So it's like, as I say, it's a broader, like, this jumped me, which is that I thought it was another forum, so that ain't the forum that this is, so I come with this forum, which is that this game more better my constituency, which is that everybody would get same, but still everybody could come to St. Thomas now and see where St. Thomas got this for true, or St. Thomas, like, let them see what he is. You understand? And to me, St. Thomas is the heartbeat of Barbados. You understand? And it's like, we gotta start treating it as such.
Dwight, before you go, I have a question though. You know, Highland, obviously you said it's private property.
Yeah.
If it was another area, one in St. Thomas, that you would choose, or would say were ideal to run as, let's say, perhaps a pilot before you move to Highland, because you want to get right before you go big. You start small and grow. Where would be that other area?
Start small. It can't start small one place. You will go spread it out, which is that 1 week you will go out, for instance, at Bridgefield. Next week you will go at Content. Then you go at Holy Innocent. All of these things is that government already put there already, which is that you don't have to come and actually buy something, buy a place or whatever. But what I mean is that you will see the pilot and see, well, look, this is something that could work, and then it could be like St. Thomas got the oysters, which is, again, everybody's got oysters for fish. And I might tell you he's a pig farmer, so everybody got kind of St. Thomas for pork. You understand what I'm saying? So that's my point.
So Dwight, I really like how you think, you know. So what's stopping the businesses from going forward on this venture?
Because at the end of the day, you know, is like, you got to remember in farming, everybody's come and you hear the Ministry of Agriculture come and say these things and say these things. But actually when you're on the ground, farming is the roughest thing to be in. You understand? Today, you could got, for me, I lost some pigs earlier this year. So I could tell you what he's saying. I had looking at 80 grand in pigs. I get a loss, I end up with 15 grand. You understand? The boy don't write this down in the book and say, this is what can happen. So certain people can look at it and run away from it. But if you got these avenues like what you bring in now, even if you got 2 pigs or 2 chickens, you got somewhere to sell them. You don't go fight with the big boys. We got it in St. Thomas. So St. Thomas will work with St. Thomas.
But I don't think you understand my question. The question is, what's stopping you or any other business person from going forward on this venture?
All right, I tried to acquire Highland myself.
Right.
When I tried to acquire Highland, it was them ain't seeing it, which is it had belong, not had belong. Santours used to rent it before.
I mean on the front of.
But I tell you what you saying.
On the front of the smaller buildings.
But I stepped forward as to create this space for everybody. This is what you're trying to show, because everybody don't think like outside the box. Sometimes like it's take one person to think this, then like you could come together with everybody. But what I was trying to do was to acquire Highland for myself. Whereas that if I got 5 people in my neighborhood, they ain't gonna pay me nothing. But I will promote, I will set up everything, the infrastructure, everything, and bring everybody. So from there, obviously, you get a free ride. So if you get a free ride, it can't stop you, because everybody don't got the mindset to make it happen. So somebody that's got to step forward to make everybody follow. You understand? So that is it there.
No, Dwight, I really want to again give you a round of applause and acknowledge your ideas. And don't go too far in the end, because we got your information. I just think your passion, and I could tell that obviously you know what you're talking about. I think we can need to keep in contact so that some of the ideas you got, we can start to make these things reality. So really appreciate that. At this time, I want to invite Senator Nichols. I see you down to speak, so the mic is all yours.
Good evening, everybody. Gregory Nichols from Alpha Seat St. Thomas. First of all, I want to thank my two friends, Tyrell and Dwight, for coming and speaking so passionately about St. Thomas. I actually want to talk about the things that they said, actually. And I will confess that we have been discussing these ideas in my moving around. As it relates to Coles Cave, I want to span it a little broader than the cave. Barbados is one of the 3 limestone settlements in the Western Hemisphere. So our geology is kind of unique. And it has implications for our groundwater supply and really life in Barbados. Not only do we have to pay more attention to our gullies, our caves, our water courses, our rivers, and our springs. I would like to see us start with putting a legislative framework that defines these settlements, these installations, in much broader terms. We have the Caves Act, but the Caves Act doesn't go far enough, in my view, to define what is a cave. We don't have legislation defining the gullies in a particular way. Now, the reason why this is important, as the young lady spoke to, we don't want to stop the local people from being able to make a living as they are doing now. But they also have to be cognizant of the safety concerns as well as the environmental issues. We can't just have unregulated access to our caves, our springs, our gullies, our water courses, because these have downstream, no pun intended, impacts on our water system. We live in a country where water retention, because we are on a limestone rock, is going to always be difficult. And a lot of the people from the Water Authority will tell you here that we're seeing rising levels of saltwater incursion in our aquifers because of the rising level of the seas. So all of what we're doing, whether it's community tourism, whether it is development for housing, and all these things we have to look at how they impact on the environment. Recently, I've noticed that a place in Welches where it was a natural water course where the water used to drain off has now become a mall. That has created, and I think residents in St. Thomas will tell you, flooding in areas, massive flooding in areas that never used to flood. When the rain falls, Short Hill is now a river, the road in Short Hill. Jackson, that never used to flood before, is flooding. And right by Sharon School, there was a descent where the water used to settle. Water doesn't settle there anymore. The water is now going into the roads and creating several problems for people who live in those areas. So that we need to start to think about our physical environment a little bit more, especially in the era of massive climate change. If we want to build climate resilience, we also have to look at how we deal and manage our gullies, our caves, our springs, our water courses, our salt wells. People covering up salt wells in Barbados to build houses. Where does the water go? And we're seeing a lot of that in St. Thomas. Covering up the salt wells. These were natural installations, some of them man-made, some of them natural, that our forebears have had in the cane grounds and in the fields to manage water. When you cover them up to build houses, that creates problems, significant problems. So when you pass on the highway and go up by Welches, even by the wall, by the old road, which is now to our right, is being filled in and compacted with marl. As children, when you walk in those areas, you used to see water and even sometimes some fish in those areas. But if you fill it up with marl, where's the water coming off of Welches going to go? Where is it going to go? So we need to do more. We need to pay more attention to our environment. We need to teach the children of Barbados the geography of the country and its linkages with the environment. Gullies are caves that collapsed thousands of years ago. We can't just have people traipsing through the gullies because that is going to affect the ecosystem in some way. So we have to manage it. How do we manage it? We need to regulate it. I also feel that in terms of the development, the idea from Mark is an excellent idea. But at the same time, how do you fund it? If you allow developers to develop, they must have planning obligations as part of their planning permission. We recently passed a new planning development legislation to replace the Old Town Planning Act. And I find that that is one of the ways in which we can be able to manage our environmental concerns and also open up economic opportunities for people. What do I mean? Dwight spoke about a farmer's market. I think that's what he's talking about. If you give a developer an opportunity to change land into housing, create a planning obligation that they would have to develop a farmer's market as part of the community to give economic opportunities to the farmers and people who cook and create other recreational spaces within the community. So we're talking about not only about tourism, but kind of oysters like Hamer's Market type. The one in St. George escapes my mind. Brighton, where my children go all the time. You don't have to go all the way into Brighton. That's a space where people can sell food, the local Barbadian cuisine, and we have a place in Barbados. I would like to see St. Thomas be, for what oysters is for fish, St. Thomas should be for chicken and pork and authentic Barbadian cuisine. So we need to create those spaces. And how you can fund these spaces? Create planning obligations for developers. And they don't have to be developing in any particular area. Because if somebody's wants to build a large hotel or something like that, give them an obligation that they have to buy X amount of local produce from the farmers in the communities around the development. They can't escape it. Rather than giving them a tax incentive, so to incentivize them under the Tourism Development Act, let us expand the categories for incentives so that if you put in infrastructure, it could be even a sporting club, develop a playing field, develop a swimming pool to teach young people how to swim, and those things. Use the legislation, the legal framework to create obligations for people who want to develop and invest in Barbados to build out economic opportunities for people who live in the communities so that they can sustain themselves from one generation to the next. In relation to what Tyrell has said, I strongly endorse us looking at the Coles Cave as a natural attraction. It is not as simple as some people think. To get into Coles Cave requires some skill and dexterity and some proper equipment. If you go on the internet right now, you see people advertising how you can get into Coles Cave, and they're charging. I believe that our caves, our rivers, we have the issue down in Joe's River. I'm not speaking about that because I was before the court and I represent the residents in St. Joseph down there. And our springs cannot, should not, and should never be owned by any one person. These are too important for our livelihood and for generations to come. Somebody can't own a spring. So that we need to start looking at ways in which we create these as a zone within the National Heritage Park. And I want to see the Ministry of the Environment and the powers that be start treating the National Heritage Park in Barbados much more seriously, so that somebody can't come and say, well, I bought the land where this river or this spring is, and exclude the residents and other people from accessing them. These are things that are very, very critical for our environment and for our livelihood. Portage Spring is another area that can be developed, but at the same time, it is not being developed for tourism per se or community tourism. Spring water is an important resource for the country. As I said, we are a limestone settlement. Water coming naturally out of the earth cannot be owned by one person, even although they own the land. So that we need, the same way we have to redefine the caves, how for many years we have been able to work with the community in Allenview and the surrounding areas. We have Harson's Cave as the primary natural and national attraction in Barbados. We need to start looking at how we treat to our springs, our rivers, and our groundwater installations and our gullies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Nichols. I think you're on cue when you raise some of the points as it relates to the need to pay more attention to our environment. I think that takes a whole of country approach. So it's not necessarily just government in terms of policy, it's for everybody to play their part. So the ones living upstream, as you said, proverbially downstream as well. This is a holistic approach as well. Excuse me, you just come to the microphone. I like how you are willing to offer your insights as well based on what you've heard. Please, your name, please.
Hi, I'm Matthew Downey. I'm from King Garden Heights. I just had a bit of an addition based on your comment on infrastructure and the way we've been treating our infrastructure with the flooding and all these recent problems. I do have a suggestion whereas we just try to add in some environmental impact statements and environmental impact studies as we're doing these infrastructural upgrades. So for example, I actually just was taking notes, so I have to bring this. With our infrastructural upgrades for our roads, for example, we should, in my opinion, just to boost our climate resilience, bring about some subterranean power, subterranean sewage, subterranean wastewater management, all of that. Move it underground to improve it in terms of our climate. Just prevent additional damage in the event of hurricanes that we're getting more commonly, things like that. And with respect to the work sites, as we all know, we're seeing more flooding because of extreme buildup and stuff like that. But I think we should add natural canals, just build on our natural canals and allow improved canals to flow through our work sites that really will still maintain the water flow and keep that natural water flow and those natural water courses, but don't prevent work from being done to build up. So really, in essence, environmental impact statements, sources, whatever you want to call them, just to build your infrastructure around those natural canals to allow the water flow to continue to flow while also allowing development.
Thank you. We give a round of applause to Matthew. Matthew, I want to thank you for taking the initiative to come up and share your ideas. It's always good to see young people being so eager and passionate about certain topics. So I take your points. You raised some that would not have crossed my mind, but again, that is the whole nature of the forum. I like your idea of these subterranean systems for the different utilities. I'm not an expert in the area, but I must assume that there's somebody in here who could take that idea and think deeper on it and tell me if that's feasible, how we can make it work, or so on. So again, I just want to thank you for that. I'd like at this point, I'd like to welcome our Minister of Educational Transformation, Minister Blackman. Thank you. And as well, Minister Abrams, I'm told that you are present. Thank you. Welcome tonight to St. Thomas as well. I'd like to, at this point, to welcome the next speaker, Mr. Kevin Henry.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Madam Prime Minister Acton, ministers, members of cabinet, MP for St. Thomas, Ms. Ford, Ms. Cynthia Ford. Good evening, everyone. My topic this evening is on the issue of nature as well, and the gullies. But mine is a little bit different to the one because I want some level of action or deterrent put in place for illegal dumping. So you can leave from Russia Gully in the east out towards Fisher Pond, come all the way down to Jack in the Box, go out to Vaucluse, which is literally a stone's throw away from the dump, where access to dispose of your garbage is free. And you will see couches, you will see fridges, you will see all sorts of debris just dumped. When cars, fans, tiles, construction waste, many different types of waste. I am old enough to remember when Jack in the Box was cleaned twice. The first time was still in nursery school, and that was a massive operation because, you know, as a child, you see all the big excavators moving in and out of the gully, and you're interested about it, and you see that it's garbage. And then once again, I think in the 2010s or the late 20noughties, they call it, I think it was cleaned again, the level of garbage. But in the last year or so, probably since COVID, one of the things I recognize is that you drive through that road almost every week, there is a new set of litter being put there. Recognizing that the people who are dumping are citizens like you and I, they're our brothers and our sisters. Our gullies are important for our nature, our water, but beyond that, we live in this place. We live in St. Thomas. We live with the trash that you come and leave there when it's only a couple kilometers away for you to reach the dump. Now, I do like the ideas that we've had and the development. We have the Roof to Reef project. You have the Gullies Are Our Life project. But I think there's time that we look to pass legislation as a deterrent, or even implement cameras or motion sensor cameras or motion sensor lights or something that would deter people who dump. And to me, the biggest dumpers right now are the animal waste people. Every week you could smell something different when you go through Jack in the Box, whether it's offal from chickens or a dead cow or something. You also have the issue where persons are literally leaving live animals, dogs, in the road, in the gully sometimes. You see it in Vaucluse, you see it in Jack in the Box. Last night, we left the handing over ceremony and I saw a whole litter of dogs, and they have to be feral by now, right? Just roaming. Where people are just going to dispose the animals if they can't afford or maintain them and leaving them there. That is neither one safe, because if somebody is not familiar with dogs or animals and encounter them going through the same gullies on a hike, that could cause another issue that we would not necessarily want to have as a nation in the international media, whether it's a local or a tourist. And I think that we do need to put some sort of action. I see that in some city areas. I see, and the minister could probably correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if there's some areas we see like posts saying that it could be recorded or something in 1 or 2 spots. And I think that we need to bring some of that into St. Thomas, because it is sickening. I'm going to be approaching middle age now, and I have seen this all of my life. And it's not working. The public campaigns, we're speaking to people about what dumping does, how it gets to our water, and they're still doing it. And the residents of St. Thomas, we have to live with the scent and the visible trash that people dispose of. So we would like to see, I would like to propose that we put some either motion sensor lights or some motion sensor cameras, or both in a place, and then prosecute those persons who dump illegally. Let's actually follow it up, so then that people would then be, with the practice of dumping would stop, and then that would then give the opportunity for the gullies and the environment to breathe, and the residents and the tourists and everybody to have a good chance. All right. My second point, all right, my second idea, I didn't know if you want to discuss that first?
Yeah, I just wanted to discuss that. First, thanks again, Kevin, for sharing your thoughts. Okay, I think the Minister of Environment just wants to respond quickly.
I want to, first of all, ditto everything you said, Kevin, right? Yeah, Kevin, because your concern is the equal concern of every single Barbadian, and I believe those in earshot and earshot of your voice. I believe it because it is a problem that has bedeviled not only this administration, but every single administration, probably since Adam was a lad. And it speaks to who we are as a people. We, unfortunately, and I'm talking about government, those in the police service, those environmentalists, ecologists, those persons who have a natural concern for the environment, can't do it alone. That is the reality. It must speak to who we are as a people, the ethos that deals with how we think about our environment, the protection of that environment, and then equally how we train from the little child, those in the dawn, to our teenagers and our young adults as it relates to illegal disposing of refuge. That is a serious concern. And as you said, right in St. Thomas there is the dump, the landfills, which has been in operation for years, and effectively so. So it's not that difficult for persons to carry their garbage and place it in the legally prescribed place. Not that difficult at all, but yet still you find them dumping illegally. There is legislation under the Health Services nuisance regulation, which speaks to a fine of $5,000 or a summary conviction of, I should think, a year in prison. It could be subject to correction. But there is legislation there if persons are caught in the act. The difficulty is that it's easier for persons to take their cell phone and take pictures and videos of nefarious activities than to take a cell phone and a video, of course, of someone who is involved in illegal dumping of refuse in this country. That is the problem. And I spoke earlier to who we are as a people, and I'm saying these are the things that we should be using our cell phone to do, to record and then report. Because we in the Sanitation Service Authority, the manager under the same legislation has the authority to report and get the matter brought before the law courts. So I'm equally making an appeal to Barbadians to take out your cell phone and take the picture and report. That is one way. But what we will be seeking to do as a government, as we have started, is to have cameras put in a clandestine way, of course, because we cannot let persons know where these cameras are placed, because that would defeat the purpose. We have put a number of cameras across Barbados, and incidentally, where we put those cameras, those persons are no longer dumping. And this is the fight the continuous fight that we are involved in. That's why I'm asking every single Barbadian to get involved, because you must now be the eyes, and you must now be those advocates that we need in order to have this fight against illegal dumping, because it is really a continuous fight for each one of us if we are going to save our country. Because when we destroy that which Gregory spoke so passionately about, that you're now speaking about in terms of our gullies and our ecosystems, then expect more Hurricane Beryl. Expect more of the Hurricane 4, the Category 4 hurricanes in the month of June. The anomalies that we are faced with, expect more of the Elsas, the freak storms, because climate change is as real as day is night. So I'm saying we will continue to put our cameras, and when we catch the perpetrators, we will ensure that the legislation that is there is enforced. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Minister Ford. I just wanted to add as well, as you were talking about the littering, the scourge that's littering at the same time, previous speakers are talking about the issues of flooding. And I don't know if everyone will know, but sometimes in many cases I've seen, when you have this level of littering and you think it's out of sight, out of mind, and when the rain starts to fall and the waters come down, you realize that a lot of the canals and so on just blocked up with a lot of trash. And you might not have seen this for a number of weeks or months, but then when it really matters, it matters. And so really think that the plea for us to start showing appreciation to where we live, our environment, and to litter and dispose of these things, start littering and dispose of these things in the correct manner, is really the plea that everybody should take to heart. Kevin, do you have another contribution?
Alex, before Kevin, in response to the minister.
Okay.
The erection of cameras, and the minister spoke to people being smart about it. You put up a camera, people dump somewhere else. But perhaps the answer is, and this is just my thought, my suggestion, maybe the answer is not to put the cameras where people dump. Now, if St. Thomas is one of the areas that attract a lot of dumping, these vehicles don't start in St. Thomas. Right, I got you, Minister, MP, I understand what you're saying. But if a vehicle passes, let's say, Redmond's Village, with 4 fridges on the back of it, and the cameras that are on the highway pick up that vehicle passing, it comes back on the return journey, and there's nothing on the back of the camera, on the back of the truck. It must have been dumped somewhere. There's only one legal dump. Is there a record of the truck showing up at the Mangrove Pond landfill? If no, then there ought to be some way of demanding or investigating the operator of the vehicle to find out where was the trash left, and then proceed with the act of prosecution as evidence allows. But because I do a lot of walking, as people know, and I don't like walking on the main road, so I walk through all kinds of back roads. And I am shocked sometimes to see the number of fridges, stoves, beds, and you cleared one weekend and you pass back 2 weeks later, and there's a fresh set. And I know the minister again talked about young people training our children, and because that's where new thought processes will permeate the society. But the truth is, there are no young people, there are no teenagers, there are no young adults dumping. They don't own trucks and they don't drive trucks. They're mature, responsible, adult, hardback people who go to church on Saturday and Sunday and who do other things and appear. And the minister again said, all Barbadians are concerned about it. But all Barbadians can't be concerned because they're in tourist dumping. And I'm not picking on you, Minister. I'm just making the point that it is our problem. We are the ones creating it. And perhaps we just have to be a little more forceful, because there is no magic to policing. There's no magic to investigating, and we use cameras to solve major crimes. We can use the cameras to solve some of these smaller ones without investing necessarily in new cameras. Use the cameras that are available to the authorities already. That's just my thought.
Well, Roy, I just want to bounce off an idea you had as well. Just using a bit more of the technology, as the minister was alluding to, we all have cell phones as well. And just throwing out an idea, if it's possible that we can start to use the pictures from our cell phones, when you see garbage, especially in the gullies, you geotag the location, so that immediately the authorities perhaps may know that there's a major dumping problem at X gully or in X canal or Y canal, so that you can better respond to it. So if you, for example, Roy, on your many walks, as I know you like to take, you pass a spot one day, and there's no garbage there. You pass back the following day, or the 2 days later, you realize that it got 3 or 4 fridges and some stoves. Immediately you can take a picture, geotag it, and we know within reason that this is something recent and we can respond to it in a way. So just an idea that I'm throwing out if it could be built upon. See if we can make that.
Well said, Alex. By the time we get to Ideas Forum St. Joseph next month, it starts tomorrow, we will be able to demonstrate and point out to you a new app that will be launched through Prime Minister's office that will allow anybody with a cell phone to take a picture, automatically geotag and report, and then it will tell you when something is done about it, if something is done about it, and some whole other things. So we're going to announce it, we're going to launch it by the time we get to St. Joseph.
Very excited to see that, Roy. Very much so. Kevin, so sorry to have kept you waiting, but
fine.
the floor is all yours again.
Solutions, once we get ideas and then the ideas bring
Correct.
solutions and they're implemented, we're happy. I would just tap back slightly to the point made by the acting Prime Minister before I go on to my final point on the bridges and in particular. And it was a single concern that I had, and I've raised it before. There was a regulation put in place upon the restoration of Jack and Botts Gullies Bridge a few years ago, about 10 years ago, in terms of the size and weight of vehicles due to the vibrations and the age of the bridge and compacting. Recently, in the last year or so, we find that many different companies and government agencies have decided to flaunt that rule. Yes, the signage is not there, but as somebody who relies on that road as a connecting road, the rest of Barbados, especially persons traveling from St. George and St. Philip and Christchurch working on the West Coast, depend on that road. If we lose that link road, the inconvenience to the people who live on the eastern side of St. Thomas and St. Joseph, and those persons coming from there to the West Coast is significant, and it will cause significant traffic delays in other areas such as Warrens. What I'm asking is that we can have a revisit of those regulations and have the signs put up and at least let companies know, especially the construction companies know, if that road is allowed for them to use, because there are alternate routes that those trucks can use. But if we lose that road again, it is a major inconvenience, not just for people locally, not just for residents of Barbados who travel to different parts of the island, but it's also for tourists and other people. So that's something that I would like the minister to be able to look at substantively before we lose the road once again. Because the last time it was done for nearly 2 years before it was back in play. And then my last point was on the environment and also transportation. And I think that most residents in rural Barbados, in particular in Rain Central and St. Thomas, as we call it sometimes, would argue that the ASH program came about due to unfortunate circumstances in terms of the volcano erupting and we having to get rid of the ash. After the ash was gone, they were maintained and did an excellent job in maintaining the size of the road and keeping the bush off the road. And I don't know about many of y'all, but for me who traverse St. Thomas often, there's a clear drop in terms of that level of service within the roadways of St. Thomas, and we find a lot of encroachment of bush and shrubbery coming onto the roads. And it's just something that we may be able to look at to see if, maybe not across the entire island, across each parish, but in the parishes that particularly need it, the rainfalls in St. Thomas, especially in the higher areas, almost every single day, if not every day. And you see the big difference between the road being the comfort in traversing when the roads are well maintained versus when the bush is in there. And that's something that is easy, but it's something that I think that will make a difference to the lives of people who use and live in St. Thomas, the roadways in St. Thomas. And that's my points for this evening.
Thank you again, Kevin. Almost right on cue, you see the rain is fall every day in St. Thomas. The rain start falling. But thanks again for your suggestions and for your ideas. We'll move to the next speaker at this point. I have Raymond Brooks. Raymond? Okay, see you come in.
Good evening, panel. All right. First thing, I wanted to give you all the opportunity. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here and speak. I'm actually living in St. James, but I have land in St. Thomas, so I have an interest. What I want to speak about is harvesting a new way to harvest energy in Barbados. Actually, has anyone here ever heard of Piezo technology? Spelled P-I-E-Z-O. You've heard about it? You want to tell me about it so that we can make this discussion a little more interesting?
So piezoelectrics are specifically to do with electricity harvested from vibrational energy, correct?
Yeah. It basically is, in a layman's terms, if I have something like a tile here, and I were to step on this tile, I'll be creating energy by just decompression, just push and pull energy. So my idea is to implement this technology at our roundabouts. All right? So if everyone can just think of the whole roundabout as movement going round and round in a circle, and we can actually just place these plates in the roundabouts, and when a car drives over them, they actually trigger the energy. And then somewhere around the roundabout, you can actually store this energy, and then you can use this energy to send it back to the grid, or you can actually use this energy to actually light up these street lights on the roundabout, or the actual traffic lights by the roundabout. So this isn't just a St. Thomas idea, this is an idea that can actually help to reduce the energy in Barbados. And then possibly, if this energy that we are harnessing, we can actually send it back to the grid, and then it can actually help the residents of St. Thomas and Barbados. The reason why I thought of this, and I wanted to present it here, is because, as someone says, St. Thomas is the heart of Barbados, is the center. And if we can generate energy from the center and push it out, then we can actually transfer this idea to other parts, wherever there's a roundabout. It's reasonably low to generate the infrastructure. You can even use it on the current condition, the current roundabouts as they are right now. The infrastructure is fairly, I wouldn't want to say cheap, but it is not as expensive as other energy resources or any new energy resources you want to implement. That is basically the idea in a nutshell. All right, thank you.
Raymond,
Sorry. Raymond, can you identify anywhere the technology is in use?
Well, when I was doing some research, the technology is used, it's used in a pacemaker. It's also used in printers. It's actually used in some cell phones. I actually thought that you can touch things on your cell phone screen and it triggers energy and it just triggers reaction. Yeah, that's the ones that come to mind where this is used, but this would have to be used at a large scale. Yeah, but I think it can work, and that can actually reduce how much energy we're putting into the streets and the roads of Barbados, where we can put that energy somewhere else and stuff like that.
Any countries?
No, well, the whole Piezo technology is used in China and other Asian countries, right? Netherlands, all right? But I haven't seen anybody integrate the technology into roundabouts. And roundabouts always have motion, right? Yeah.
I really appreciate that idea. That's a very, very innovative idea. I think for most of us, it's probably the first time that we've heard about it. I think, Minister, yeah, you have something? Okay, you contribute? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Very briefly, I think it's quite timely that you said that. Certainly from an educational point of view, the footprint of our educational infrastructure across the country is quite large in terms of schools, and the cost of education, of electricity, sorry, yearly is a major thing. And one of the challenges I would put out to you, since you seem to know a lot with the technology, is to perhaps not just work with education, but also our Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology to see how perhaps on a phased basis it could work rolling out across our school system in the country. That's something that I would like to commit to with you. I haven't seen Minister Reid here. I know he had another engagement, but it's something that I think that we can build out. But equally, putting the challenge to our young scientists in our schools to help build out. One of the things that we have to also do is not just import technology, but use the skill set that we're trying to develop in our system to also build on existing technologies where it exists, and also to come up with new challenges as well, repositioning Barbados as a knowledge-based economy. So that's something that I think that could work. Of course, as you rightly said, there are cost implications for the technology as well, but if we can settle those things, I think it's something that can work once we can roll it out on a phased basis and see what it would require to go forward to do it.
Thank you, Minister. I just have one more question for you, Raymond. Again, it's the first time, I'm being honest here, the first time I'm hearing about this technology. Yeah. But based on what you're saying, I'm envisioning that this can perhaps be used in high traffic areas, not necessarily limited to vehicular traffic, but foot traffic as well.
Well, you are correct. And when I first thought of this, I thought of Warrens, the Warrens area, yeah, where there's constant traffic there.
Okay, well, where my mind is taking me is if there's any areas we have where there's high foot traffic, where you have persons consistently walking to and from.
You mean like Swan Street?
For example.
Yeah.
Is there, perhaps we can look at using that technology to help power lights in the area, to help in terms of generating some electricity, because there's always foot traffic in these areas. So just, again, new to the technology, but just thinking it out. So appreciate you for sharing that. That's something I'll do a bit more research on.
Equally, on that point, thinking sports related, a football field to power the lights at a football field. Yeah. But I really like to hear more on how much the investment may be that has to go into it. And I suspect it may be a lot of money based on what I'm seeing off of Google. Mm-hmm. But as Minister Blackman said, I think it's something that can be worth exploring because it's very innovative.
Thank you.
And there's so many ways that you can frame it.
Again, thanks, Raymond. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So these are the type of ideas that I really love to hear at the Ideas Forum, because you come here thinking you hear one thing or think you'll know what someone will bring, but they bring a very new idea to the table, which causes all of us then to think a bit more deeply on that. So thanks again, Raymond. Thank you. No worries. I'd like to move to the next speaker. We have a Shane Gibson to speak.
Hi, good evening. With protocol being observed, I just want to say a pleasant evening to everyone. These are a series of ideas that came out of a pet project of mine called Elevate Beijing. Oh, sorry, that would help, right? Shane Gibson, that's my name. From Welshman Hall Gully. I've been in St. Thomas for 6 years. Originally a St. Michael guy playing on my Lord's Hill, but St. Thomas has become a place of love, renewal for my family and myself. First Avenue Welshman Hall, sorry. So clearly I knew. Sorry, the hashtags of. All right, cool. So at least I bring a laugh to the crowd. Top stuff. But yeah, so I'm speaking about something called Elevate Beijing, which was a pet project of mine, especially during COVID. There are a couple of ideas that's going to come out for the main idea. So I'll just try to be brief. But if you want the fullness of this with the 5-quarter analysis and all the other jazz, I'll be more than willing to submit it to the relevant persons. But this is just more of a teaser for it, all right? So let me start with this month. This month, we know we got more kites in the air than Trafet got chips. And they can be making noise with the bulls and stuff and so on. One of the first ideas was to actually elevate the concept of the Beijing kite to become kite drones. Now we know about staking out a kite. But if you stake out the kite with a source and you use materials that are, I don't want to go fully into it, you use materials to substitute for the kite paper, such as fabric, solar fabric to make the kite. These will obviously be only licensed really to farmers to address perennial larceny, and I guess maybe the illegal dumping. But the idea is essentially to harness these kites, allow regular fellas in the village who are the best kite makers to pioneer and lead that process, work with persons at the SJPPI or what's not, and maybe give me a chance to also scale this thing to go to our brothers and sisters in Africa to help with poaching and what's not. The ultimate idea is that you're going to use a kite instead of a drone, which has to use a lithium-ion battery, and after a while only has a certain amount of time before you take it down and then charge it again to put it back up. But you will have this kite that is using solar power to keep the video and everything running inside of it. It will have the relevant gyroscopic stabilization and so on. And it will also, if you change the model of it, you can change the bull to actually become a small wind turbine or a small windmill, and hence use the wind up there to generate energy. So that's one idea under this concept of elevate region, right? And again, I could submit the document to you, which would fully flesh out what it looks like, but this is just a teaser. The second one is innovating our fishing boats. I don't think, and I'm subject to correction here, I'm not a fish person, but I don't think the fishing boats have had much innovation over the years. The idea is to, one, redesign the fishing boats that they're leveraging, again, solar, but also, I call it like a tri-power. You're leveraging solar, wind, and the wave energy. And what it's going to do is going to help you to stop spending a bunch of money on ice. You can redesign the fridges that are, for example, inside of the day boats. And it could also then power a small Starlink. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Starlink. That way, the boats, when they're out there, we could reduce fishermen getting lost. And thanks to a certain South African with his satellites all around the world, these fishing boats will be powering their own electricity from sun, wind, water, connected to the internet. And on top of that, they're able to reduce the amount of diesel they may need to buy, or the amount of ice, or the amount of energy they need to do with keeping the catch that they got cool. The third thing is essentially a co-op, and I'll just go back to the idea of this. As a little man growing up in Millardsville, my dad always spoke fondly of the foundry, right? And this is a place that taught Bajans how to make stuff. He said, Shane, I learned how to make spoons, I learned how to make lathes, I learned how to make cogs and stuff and so on. Unfortunately, we don't have the foundry. But as I think of my dad, pardon me here, there's a dad joke, fondly, I remember the thing that came out to him was you had a cross-section of older people enabling and elevating younger people. And for me, as an operations manager where I am, my form of leadership, form of management has been one where I realize we have a lot of kids who have rote knowledge, but they don't know how to apply their knowledge to actually make something and make a difference. So the idea is to have, I was playing with the things that are Barbadian, because again, it's the Elevate Bajan. And the idea I was playing with was the Pelican Business Institute or the Barbados Innovation Institute. But here's what it is. It's going to meet a felt need, which is receivables management. Now, I've managed to lead a team that has done some work for our entity here in Barbados, a government entity. And we've seen how receivables management has helped to recoup money that was lost. The idea is to take the students and they would actually become the workforce. Their mentors / managers would be persons who are professionals in the field, whether they're from SJPPI, BCC, school, or what's not. But you'll always hear the youth saying, well, listen, they're trying to apply to a job, but I need 500 years of job experience, and they can't get it. So this allows them to be placed into a real company or real institute that's addressing receivables management. We have delinquent debts. If you look at BRA, we have issues with managing the early life cycle of the 30 to 90 day, and then the ones that go beyond 120 days. And there are a number of places that have delinquent debt. I've managed to train persons to be able to become rock stars, and I'm sure that with this idea, we'll be able not only to allow these persons coming out of school who would not normally get the relevant education to get exposure to solve real problems in Barbados. The ultimate hope is that this Barbadian Innovation Institute, or whatever we call it, will not only just stop at the receivables management aspect. Every line of business will be by students, by youth, of course, with then a senior person. So you still have accountability, you still have wisdom, and on top of that, you still have the cross pollination of behavior, culture, and so on. So it's going to have, for any institute or any organization, you need to have HR, you need to have finance, you need to have maintenance outside. Again, this will all be students, right? In my opinion, is what the Polytechnic should really be doing. They should be judged on keeping the Polytechnic running and not just doing the courses, but actually running the institute. It should be run by students, but that's another conversation. It's not a unique idea. It's basically a co-op, but you will find these in Sweden, the Netherlands, or what's not. But it is taking our rote learners and equipping them with actual skills to solve problems in Barbados, right? And again, it's all under the concept of the pet project I had during COVID. Clearly, I had a lot of time on my hands, called Elevate Bajan, because we have to move from this place of hating our Bajan antiquity, right? We have people that come here and spend $5,000 to go down Brandon's and to dip their toes in the water, to get a snow cone, to go down in Westbury. We got to learn to love who we are. And we could go back to all these speeches that we've heard from whatever government, whether it's Barrow about the mirror image of ourselves, or even our PM. We could go back to these messages, but at the end of the day, it's for us as Bajans to realize I need to appreciate what I have. I got to appreciate using the jam that my grandmother made over Aunt Jemima, right? So it's with that heart and with that basis that this whole concept of Elevate Bajan is hoping to be able to be a solution to elevate that which is Bajan, but also bring our youth to be able to solve real problems, big problems, in a tangible and easy way. So thank you for your time.
And thank you, Shane. Shane, when you go back to your seat, I want you to pat yourself on your back, because putting satellites, as you refer to the Starlink, putting satellites in the sky that provide this thing called internet was the craziest idea anyone ever heard. And so, when you suggest things like you did, Elevate Bajan, using kites as drones and using solar material and so on, to me, these are ideas that I would not have had on my own. I know now that you've brought them not just to me, but to the audience here and those watching. Perhaps you can generate some ideas from Elevate Bajan that we could have never dreamed of. So I just want to let you know, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Sure. And we have your contact information, so anytime that we need to talk about solar drones and kites,
yeah, I'm willing to give the full thing to the relevant stakeholders. Again, is a burden of love. So, yeah. All right. So I'll get to my fellow foundation man here. All right. Cool.
Very well.
Cool beans.
Okay. Terrell, I think I saw you in the audience. You wanted to make a point or add something here?
Good night again. I was just saying that following the regathering events, all of them, there was one in particular about the storytelling. I think it was in the park. And it made me think a lot about my generation, persons my age and around my age. And if there were to be a regathering 20 years from now, who will be telling the stories? And I really think that we in St. Thomas should put some kind of informal forum in place for safeguarding our knowledge and the knowledge management and the knowledge passing on to the youth. We don't want that when MP Ford and Peggy Niles and Gregory Nichols and everyone who has this deep history of St. Thomas. Yeah, we don't want the knowledge to go on with them. We really want to safeguard the knowledge of St. Thomas and the deep history that it holds, so that these stories can live on and on. So I think that we really need to set up some informal knowledge passing on sessions.
That's a very interesting idea. And I think it goes deeper than just from a parish base. I think it has to be within our education system. That has to be built into our curriculum, especially perhaps into our history syllabus. And you cater it to each school, perhaps a school that may be in Christchurch, or you have a holistic curriculum, whether it be the social studies or history, or the civic subject. And I think that needs to be built in from the primary school level all the way up to university. Because we still learn about Caribbean civilization at UE, as you know, as a mandatory subject. At BCC, you have to do ethics and citizenship. In secondary school, social studies. So how can we build it in to part of that education transformation strategy? And that is where the knowledge can then be passed down. If you leave it to informal conversation, nobody can come. Nobody can be there. But if you build it in and find it to make it in a way that's very creative, that people can enjoy and people can understand. And I think that is where we need to start framing and going forward. And I know the minister is here responsible for education transformation. So how can we come up with these ideas and share these stories and put it in a way that's very creative? As you said, the Standpoint Stories? Standpoint series, which is very good. But now how do we build that now in a way that can reach people who may not come to the event? Or you put it in a movie or in an act or in theater or whatever it may be, whatever form. So I think that's where we could possibly take that. So very, very, very good suggestion indeed. I think y'all need to give him a round of applause. So we'll be moving to, I believe, we have one more person. Okay. Matthew Downey? You had another point? Okay, that was just for record. Okay, brilliant.
Well, no problem. I just want to, before we wrap up, I just want to offer my insights. It was the first time being in the chair and listening to the ideas from this perspective, and I'm completely blown away. Don't know if it's a St. Thomas thing or if, you know, the next parish has some big boots to fill, but I'd like to commend every single person who shared ideas tonight. Those who were scripted to do so, and those like yourself, Matthew, who took the initiative, really commend you for it. I really appreciate the ideas that you shared with me and with everyone else here present. So just from my end, appreciative message from me.
So thank you very much also for inviting me once again. And Alex, it was a pleasure to share the stage with you. As Roy said, it is age before beauty. I don't know if it was beauty or if it was age hosting tonight. Or it was all three. Age, beauty, and everything else in between. Okay, fair enough. But I really want to commend the persons who presented tonight. As Alex said, some very fresh, innovative ideas. Because as they go through the country, you hear the same old, same old. So and I really commend Dwight, especially. That was my idea of the night. Perhaps that could be something we could put out, idea of the night, and get him a little award, Roy. Idea of the night, suggestion of the night. And I encourage people to come out. Fair enough. We could go back through the tapes and then call. But thank you so very much, and please get home safely, Roy.
So, having had their chance to wrap up, we cannot leave here without giving the opportunity to the acting Prime Minister as well as the MP for St. Thomas. So we'll go first to you, MP.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. Sounds so soft-hearted. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good. They've given the most aged person here the chance to wrap up. And I'm so happy because it says that this elderly is being embraced with the youth, like these young, bright gentlemen and ladies who are here this evening. I want to just put some topics on the table, and they can be discussed and fleshed out otherwise, because in the interest of time. And I want to say that the evening session was really very empowering. And the first one I want to refer to is we're having so many challenges with young people and the violence. And I want to also extend my sympathy not only to the young child's parents and guardians, but indeed to any other family that is feeling that kind of violent pressure, and then the trauma that comes with it if they don't get constant tutoring and guidance, and so it impacts on them for a whole lifetime. And with that out of the way, the first thing I want to, and I just want to put the idea on the table, I'm not going to elaborate on it now. We can always get four otherwise that we can discuss it. I want to recommend community-based activities. We have too many hundreds of Barbadians who are now retired, and people have just pushed them on the back burner. You're talking nurses, teachers, doctors, social workers, physical education personnel, and so on. And they just go home and waste away when I know that they're the ones that are the good pillars of good discipline, hard work, dedication, and sharing their knowledge and skills in communities. It happened before. It can happen for us again. We're losing a lot of the mores and the values that we were brought up with, where I still say yes, please to people, whether they're pleased or not, but that was the tradition. My mother would call and would say, yes, please. Did you do so? And say, no, please. And I'm not talking about servility. I'm talking about good discipline and respect for not only the elderly, but for self and others. And I would wish for us to be able to reach out to the police who are retired, the teachers, security officers, the bus drivers, persons who were in the community that were the mentors, and let them tell their stories and help to be able to reach our children. In our elderly department, we have a project that we are trying to now have it established properly, where we call it the Granddaddy Project, and it's exclusively for boys and males, particularly with mature males, so that the mentorship can happen, because we can take cognizance of the families where sometimes there are 3 children in a household, 3 different fathers, and then the mentorship is not there. But the last child's father, he maintains the house. And then when it comes to the other 2 children whose father has to pay the taxes or whatever, or has to pay the money through the court, that father of the 3rd child says, he ain't getting the food in here to eat tonight, because he was his father and put the money in the court. And then that little boy is lonely, he's going to steal, he doesn't have friends. So many things go wrong with our children. I love men and the boys. The girls will always survive. And so I want for us to look at a project like that as we go forward. The other one, well, the illegal dumping came up already, so I will not even waste time with that. But let us use our retired people for that other matter. The other one is to do with the pensioners in our communities and what is happening with them. Many people are nurturing them or coming forward to say, I'm going to offer you my services for free, and so on. And then they are robbing them blind. Power of attorney, title deeds are taken. Other people come in to want to work with them, and they're taking away everything the seniors have. And the thing is, because everybody knows my name, they will know the Honorable Prime Minister and the Deputy here too, and the others, but don't care where they come from, because they've given me that position as elder care advisor. Everybody calls me for even off the island. My mother's in the house, and some young man carrying away all her pension. My father is in there and he's sick, and they're coming forward and acting as though they want to help, but the title deed's gone. And that is what we are hearing every day in our society. I want that to be another discussion that we can do, not tonight in the interest of time, as well as persons who have taken a long time to come here in this long period, and then they have to go other places. So let us put that on the table, because it is getting worse by the minute, and nearly every community now has senior citizens, because we're living longer, but many of them are not living healthier because families have abandoned them as soon as that is taken. Our friends, and there's nothing that hurt me worse than that old lady who was raped a few weeks ago, some old lady in her 80s. And that says that we are not living together as a community, the close-knit community Barbados would have been before. The other one I want to look at, and I think it is extremely critical, and it happened before in the 1990s when I was in education with Ms. Motley and the Prime Minister now, Honorable Prime Minister. And when she moved over to be the Attorney General, she would not let me to use the Ministry of Education's work. But I enjoyed it because the prisoners, especially the ones who were the trustees, they came into every village across Barbados, and they did what the Beautify Barbados guys are doing on the road now. But the funds were put towards their own accounts, so that when they got released, you don't send the hardcore criminals, or excuse me, the prisoners who would have committed murder and all that, but there were some who were, and they were trustees. And I remember Mr. Carrington from Westmore Hall, Sharon School got cleaned every time. They brought the equipment, they got refreshments and so after, but the money was put towards their accounts, and they were able, when they were released, to be able to take home something, so that the village did not say, he's a prisoner, don't talk with him. Our family say, you want to come back in here, but he had money, he could buy food, he or she, for that matter. I would like for the Ministry of Home Affairs to be able to look back at that project, because this is now about 10 years where we have not had the services of those persons, and it really is a lot of hardship. And the other part of it is there are females. They do excellent craft. I have a painting from that gentleman who was the prisoner from, I don't remember the name of the place now, Garcia. Because every time the Labour Party had a conference, those prisoners that were there with the trustees, all the paintings and so on, and they got market price for the paintings. I'll never part with mine. And I'm saying they're doing that kind of painting and they're doing skills. Mrs. Jiggets was one of the persons who worked with them. We need to get back to that because some of them are just in there picking their fingers. I'm planning perhaps when they come out what I said will do wrong or how it will change my life for the right. So I would like for that to happen, but that is another discussion. I'm not only putting it on the table right now. The other one is community policing. We are having too many problems in our communities, and we who are the persons living in the villages and the heights, we are not mentoring anybody else's children. We shut our gates. We see the children, here's somebody normally starved out child. I live in the community where Bart was born, so I know. And these same young men in particular, but their girls too, are suffering. When I know in the late 1990s, because I was born many moons ago, as I said, I'm the oldest person here tonight. I don't care if I look so or not. I'm the oldest person. And I know that in the late 1990s, there were projects that we were pursuing where the DARE program had just started. Station Sergeant Carl Marshall, he came to the school 2 and 3 times a week and talked to the children about illicit drugs and what they should do to protect themselves and so on. They did competitions. They did all kinds of activities across the entire parish. If we can get that kind of mentoring again, because now that there are aspects or there's a certain component of drugs that would be okay for use for recreational purposes, we still have the permeation of the drugs in almost every community and every household, and we are losing our children as a result. So that is another one I would like for the community policing. The children did competitions. They went on tours. The particular ministry that manages the drug, what do you call it again? The NCSA, they were on board, and we saw a total change in what would have been happening because the children got the exposure and the education to be able to stay away from those drugs and to be able to choose good friends and to then spread the examples when they went to their villages. And I come into almost the final one. I would like for the plantation owners in this country, especially the ones in St. Thomas, to be approached by the Minister of Agriculture and others, because there are very few agricultural plots or plantations, I should say, in the parish that are under cultivation now. Everybody is leaving it to let the land life fallow in order for them to build houses or to be able to sell it off. And then there is absolutely nothing happening. Some coconut trees near my house are as tall as this school. The bushes are there. People are afraid to walk on their own because of the environs that they're walking through. Those plantations are just abandoned. I want the Honorable Minister and my Madam Deputy here to be able to let the people from the land department check to see if those people are paying taxes. You're talking Highland, Canefield, Vaucluse, and the place is abandoned. You cannot walk on your own because nothing is happening, but we want food security. And those were the lands that grew the food and the sugar cane. I saw sugar cane growing in St. Philip and St. Christchurch a day last week. I was up there. And I'm looking and saying, but St. Thomas has no sugar cane fields now. And it has good, strong, arable land. I think that the governmental level needs to make some communication with those plantation owners and encourage, even if they sublet the land, so that people who want to grow vegetables or grow sugarcane or whatever, that can happen and we can get the food security here instead of, I don't even know what President Trump will do anyhow just now with the things that we have to import for food and all that. So we need to feed ourselves, and we can do it again in Barbados, all down in Springvale, where my mother grew canes and we had to cut them and head them and get them to the main road. Nothing is happening but massive trees, forests, and the cowage. That is another one I want us to put on the table for the next time. And I think the final one is the ZRs and the TAP program, Madam Minister. Yes, we want for small people, small meaning people who are ordinary folks who have ideas and have their own management skills, because there's nobody that could beat a shopkeeper of the past. When a shopkeeper came, he would add up everything that you purchased, in his head or her head and say, the bill come to X amount. The TAP program people and the ZRs have been given a privilege to be able to get involved in business because they offer services. But unfortunately, there are too many complaints. Senior citizens are being left alongside the street because they do not have to pay at the TAP program. They show their ID and they get in and they get a ride. They're given a ticket and then the reimbursement comes from the Ministry of Transport and so on. School children the same, but it has now gone to the worst level. And I know my name is Cynthia, so Don sang about me. Ask Cynthia. Everybody calls me St. Lucie, America, wherever. Did you hear? Well, I said, well, you got a voice. Anyhow, I will say what has to be said and I will direct it. These young children and these adults are being left on the road, even when they're going to the polyclinic, they're going to the doctor, they're going to do a little shopping. The TAP programs most of them do not stop to pick up the seniors nor the school children, and they leave them languishing on the street. And the other one is the worst one that I've dealt with, where 2 weeks ago there was a little girl sitting in the back seat and the vehicle was full. And the person stopped at the bus stop to pick up somebody who had the 350 and told the child, stand up and let the man sit down. You sit in his lap. I'm sorry, it wasn't my grandchildren. And that little girl said, no, I can't sit in his lap. He said, get out. And that little girl was dumped on the street coming up by the psychiatric hospital, Black Rock, to allow an adult to get in. And then, well, the government is taking too long to pay so we can't take it the children because we ain't getting money. There has been an agreement. That has to be followed up to be able to save our young children and our senior citizens and any and everybody else who has to travel by them. And final thing, Madam Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, I have asked for a light, a traffic light to be placed at Warrens. To my mind, Warrens is a death trap. We don't need for any more persons to be injured there. Almost every morning we see a police officer. When the police officer is there, almost everything goes smoothly. By the time that police officer moves, 4 and 5 ZRs and they're on the pedestrian crossing. You cannot have a pedestrian crossing that is right opposite a polyclinic as soon as you come out a roundabout. I don't have the knowledge, I don't know about roads, but I've been begging for it. Why should we wait for more people to get injured or killed as a result of not acting as responsibly as we should? Take out the pedestrian crossing that comes right out from the time you come from Warren's Bottom to the roundabout that will put you on to Huddersfield turning, or you go right around when you go the other way. There's a pedestrian crossing right there. It is the most dangerous. When the tail of the vehicle is there, you can't pass. Or if you try passing, you're going to cause some accident, or you're going to hit the pedestrian. If I'm going to the polyclinic, my foot is broken, I have crutches, or I have a walking stick, or I am that aged that I'm bent, or I have a young baby, and there are 3 pedestrian crossings in less than 100 feet. And it is the most dangerous. We need 1 pedestrian crossing and the traffic light. And just like how come Mayor has theirs, press the button when people have to cross. And then people cross, and then it goes back on. It makes it even better and safer. And it's unfortunate people will move slower. They're in the wheelchair. We're looking at the elderly. We're looking at the disabled. They are Barbadians and they're people too. And unless that is put there as soon as possible, we're going to get challenges, and it's not going to be happy at all. They need to move that pedestrian crossing that is as soon as you come out of Warren's Bottom, we call it, as well as the one that goes a little further down by the bus stop, and put up a sign that says no parking for the ZRs. Sometimes they even block the entrance to the polyclinic, and the fellas get out around cross and call cross passengers from over by Massey. It cannot work. And therefore, those are the ones that I think are most critical on my list, but I had 20. And I will put them, if I can't have them redressed or addressed, I will put them in a parliamentary question. They have no choice but to answer them through Madam Deputy Prime Minister and the team. And therefore, I want to say how happy I am for us to have had this forum. Last week, we had so much rain at Rock Hall. We couldn't host it there. A lot of people are not here this evening in the same way, I believe, because of other intricacies and engagements. But I think tonight has been most fulfilling. And we need, as a society, to mentor children, even if they are not our own, but particularly the boys. And our Granddaddy project is my final comment, where the elderly department is engaging persons who, especially the retired persons, the same police officers and nurses and teachers and social workers and so, to mentor boys, but it is boys to men or men to boys. We push the boys and say, go down home, you the girl, go down. No, we want males to mentor the boys because of the shortage of males within homes and communities, and preferably retired males, because we know we can call on them almost any time. Whether it be a preacher, a teacher, whoever, a sanitation worker, bus driver, we want men to mentor our boys. That will save this confusion that we are seeing, where our boys feel left out. The girls got the bow ribbon on the hair, they got the bubbles, they got the earrings in the ear, they got the new books, they got everything to start up a school. When you look at the boy, the clothes he had on 2 years ago, hair not comb, pants dropping off, he can't find the belt, and the mother say he too that hard, he was his father put the money in court, and that child has to suffer as a result. I want for you who are retired, or you who have time, give me a little call. Everybody knows my name for all over this in the world, because they call and say my mother home and I need somebody to go and give home help. So I can give my number, because I want you to link with me. If I can get the mentors to start up the first pilot, we can get it going across Barbados. When we save our boys, they will make the good, decent men, productive men that this society requires. But somebody has to take the bull by the horn and deal with it. It is not me doing it. I will set the program with Dr. Wiltshire and the Ministry of People Empowerment. You, the adults, you who have time, you who have the courage and the instincts within you to know, if I didn't have a male in my family, I would not be the person I am today. Call Cynthia and help she. I end in Beijing. Call my help me. And I'm willing to be able to do it, because once we pilot goes, every parish and every school can have this kind of program, and you will see a change in the males of Barbados. And as they grow forward to be fathers, grandfathers, the landscape of Barbados will be settled again in a way that everybody wants to come here and be with us. I want to thank you all. They didn't give me the chance to do the vote of thanks, but I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight, sharing your ideas. Do not forget, when you give, the Lord blesses you even tenfold. And at the end of the day, you can be safe in your homes and your communities, your heights and your villages, because you know you have done your best. And when you've done your best and given back to society, angels can't do more. So I want to thank you sincerely for all you've done, and I look forward to the calls. They're calling me from the States to tell me that the mother home by herself and she get robbed. They can call me from the States so they get the number, but just have it too. So just say who it is. I can't answer the phone all the time, but I will WhatsApp in the evening when I get in or whatever to be able to hear. And I have a long list waiting for those who will volunteer. Voluntary service is extremely important. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate everything. God bless you. Do get home safely.
I think we need an ideas forum just for Cynthia Ford. But that is the reason why the people of St. Thomas have had the confidence in her over all of these years, and certainly why we certainly in our party also has the confidence in her, because she continues to speak from the heart of St. Thomas. And Cynthia, I just want to thank you for the summary of the points that you just made, because I think one of the most important things that stood out for me is the call to people to mentor. Of everything you said, that stands out, because I think sometimes we are quick to complain, we are quick to say all the things that are going wrong in our society and our communities, but very often we don't step up to the plate and be counted when it matters the most. And especially with what would have happened recently, I think that Bajans really need to do more than complain. I think you need to stand up and be counted. Particularly, as she said, the men in our society need to be leading the charge, because there are things that men will be able to tell our boys and interact with them that we as females, with all of the good intentions, we will not be able to do. And I think that the call really has to be for the strong men, the men who are doing well in our society from across all of the communities, to stand up and be counted, because Barbados needs you. Now, the young man, I think it was the one who spoke about Elevate Barbados, Shane? Shane, it was? Yes. I think that theme that you have titled your venture is something that we need to take away from this St. Thomas Ideas Forum. In everything that I heard this evening, it was about elevating Barbados. And you gave some very good ideas, a lot of them obviously revolving around a scientific approach, which is not uncommon. And I think Bajans need to understand this, and Chad, you will become aware of it very shortly. When we come to do the scholarship winners, we find that there are several Barbadians who excel in the area of the sciences. There are persons who are thinking about finding solutions for problems. And in many cases, that is what we need to encourage. But we don't just need them to get the scholarships and go overseas. We need to be able to find a way to capture that creativity, that knowledge base here in Barbados. I know we created Future Barbados, which was a program to be able to get our young people who had excelled in various fields to be able to come back and find solutions, working with the public sector to be able to find solutions to our everyday problems. And that is what this regathering, that is what this Ideas Forum is about. Being able to not only allow you to come and talk and tell us about the ideas that you have, but you would be surprised that from many of the things that you actually impart in this forum, and whether the ones in St. Lucie, St. Peter, I can tell you that many of us take away from what you say some of the ideas to be able to implement it within our various ministries. Now, everything comes with a cost, and I think we have to be practical as well. So there are some ideas that we're not going to be able to run with right away, but the ones that we can, definitely, I think that already we've shown that we've put things like the Gullies Project and certainly clearing the bridges and doing those types of things in motion. The highways project that was mentioned in terms of cleaning the roadways in St. Thomas, I don't think is any mystery. St. Thomas is a very difficult area to traverse in terms of cleaning because of the agricultural lots of land that have been left not maintained for a long time. And so while we have the Highways Beautification Program, which is across the country, obviously parishes in the Scotland district have required us to look at having more resources. In some cases, we need mechanized equipment to be able to clear a lot of the agricultural lands and certainly the roadways. And in this next financial year, we're going to be increasing the number of entities that we have engaged across the country, and in particular in St. Thomas, to be able to address those issues. We started with a pilot, being able to give about 15 businesses, small businesses across the country, the opportunity to be able to clean the roadways. And I think, in fairness, we've done pretty okay in terms of starting that process. Obviously, there's still more to be done, and I remain committed to making sure that we get that exercise completed. As it relates to elevating Barbados in relation to these hubs that I believe Dwight spoke about, I think that's really where you're going, farmers' hubs. I messaged the minister because I found it surprising that the data had not been collected in terms of farmers. Now, he actually tells me that there has been data collected. I don't know if you were participated in that, but data has been collected and very shortly will be published in relation to the farmers and what they're selling across the country. So what I would suggest is, if you haven't participated, maybe you need to reach out, because I've already given him your name, to be able to reach out and certainly to share the ideas that you have. Because he also indicated to me that the ministry is also supportive of the creation of farmers markets. Now, maybe it is a case where enough information has not been put out there that they are open for business, but I think that you are perfectly correct that in the Scotland district in particular, that there are some opportunities where maybe government can help to facilitate if the private sector comes forward. If you come forward, for instance, and say, this is a piece of land we are interested in, and you get together with a few other people in a cooperative, and maybe then they can help to facilitate it. I would like to see more of the Brighton's markets. I would like to see more of those opportunities with people who look like us in this room. That's real talk. But the only way that is going to happen is if we come forward and say what it is that we want to do. Again, ain't enough to talk about it no more, right? If we want to claim our spaces, if we want to create the opportunities for our people and to be investors in our spaces, then we gotta come forward and tell government as well what it is that we want to do. Okay, so I think the door is open, and it is there for you to push. So I would suggest bright and early tomorrow morning you start to make some calls so that you can certainly be at the forefront of being able to lead perhaps the hubs in this part of the country as well. I think, Gregory, I agree with you on the legislation. Maybe we have to take a look at the legislation as it relates to the gullies. But I do feel that the bigger issue is how do we treat to our attractions, because tourism is what drives this economy, but we need to look at our product. We really need to look at the product and reevaluate what exists. I ran a rum shop for many years. I've been saying for many years that rum shops, for instance, are a tourist attraction. I will maintain that to the day I die. I drink some good rum too. Don't drink it no more, but I have drunk some rum. But I do feel that we miss the boat sometimes in that a lot of the ideas that are shared here are things, as I said before, that are indigenous. There are things that we sometimes take for granted. And I think we need more people at the grassroots level to come forward with a lot of these ideas. I see a lot of things going on in St. Thomas too with the off-roading and things like that, where again, it sets Barbados apart from a lot of the other tourism destinations. Those are the things that are going to be unique. Those are the ideas that we want coming forward. And sometimes government is often a bit slow to follow. So I feel like sometimes the public has to lead the charge and then bring government to the table and say, listen, this is what we want to do. So Terrell, you need to pull together the people and you need to speak to your MP and let us get an engagement where we can have a conversation about the potential opportunities within the parish of St. Thomas to be able to create better attractions in this space. I want to thank you, the moderators, because again, I think you guys are doing an excellent job. It's good to see young men at the charge, not this young man, because he's not so young anymore. But it's good to see you guys both leading the charge in terms of taking over this forum. It has really transitioned in terms of being what I consider a complaints forum to really giving, and don't get me wrong, complaints were good because complaints got a lot of things done in the parish of St. Thomas as well. So tonight I'm happy not to hear complaints about roads and certainly about the buses and the transportation system in the way that we would have had last year and the previous years. But it means that as a government as well, we've been listening. And we may not be able to get everything done all at the same time with the demands that the public has for us across all 30 constituencies. But I can assure you that all of us remain collectively committed to being able to tick off the boxes as we go through. Cynthia Ford, the buses are coming. The 30 buses that we have purchased will be here. I'm told they're to arrive the 8th of April. We have to get the charging stations put in place once they come in. But I know that Sturgis and all of the other locations in this particular parish have been calling out for us to be able to get some easements. I see you from St. Andrew, obviously raising the call for buses. But we have also committed this afternoon in Parliament as well for an additional 30 buses to be purchased. Some of the monies will go off for the deposit, and then monies have been committed for us to buy an additional 30. Again, cries have not gone unheard by this administration in being able to deliver. Can we deal with the PSV sector better? Yes, we can. But I want to make it clear that we are being asked to reverse a behavior, a bad behavior that has permeated this society for decades. And just like if you have a child that you have not been disciplining, you are likely to find that child getting him or herself in trouble. The PSV sector at times is no different. It is going to require us sitting with people, going through training, making sure that we understand some of the issues that they are having, making sure we've done a lot better in terms of the payments of late to make sure that they have been paid. But what we will not condone is persons putting off old people off of vehicles. We will not condone persons putting off school children off of vehicles. And I want to make it clear to all of you that we have said repeatedly, if there are concerns, if there are reports of these things, you need to let us know through the Transport Authority. The only way that we can investigate it is if we are given the information. My colleague minister earlier said people are using the cell phones for all kinds of nefarious activities, but not the things that really matter. So I too want to appeal to you. Now, that's not the only way that we will deal with offenders, but it does help us, whether it's littering, whether it is other offenses, to be able to call out people and to be able to investigate the matters. Where it leads is a matter of how we investigate. But at least if we know the concerns, we can actually do a better job of being able to address these issues. So fret not, we've already had a number of them trained up. Despite all of the protests, many of them have actually come on board, and the stakeholders are working with us to be able to wrestle the PSV sector to the ground. But we must never forget that this society has now gotten to a point where we forget that there are consequences to actions. And whether it is the PSV sector, whether it is what we see in our communities in relation to violence and drugs and all of these other things that have crept in, the fact is that we need to start talking about consequences, because it is only when we talk about the consequences that people are, in particular our children, start to understand that their actions have consequences, not just on one individual, but on an entire society. And it is our responsibility to help our children and our society to understand that there are consequences for littering, there are consequences for bad behavior. If we don't speak to these things, the society will not change. So again, I want to thank you, Roy, Tahir, Alex, for leading the forum tonight. As you know, Prime Minister is off island, as usual, doing the business of the people. And we have been able to, again, have the conclusion of another successful Ideas Forum for St. Thomas. We are on to St. Joseph next month. And I believe we start officially, y'all had your handover, but we start officially with a church service at St. Anne's Church, I believe the AG told me, on Sunday of this week coming. So I look forward to all of you there, and certainly to another Ideas Forum in the month of April. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Please get home safely.